Initially introduced as a Batman villain, Ra al Ghul soon earned a notorious reputation on the streets of Gotham, and he also assumed the role of the League of Assassins leader. He has also played a role in the CW series Arrow, and his popularity has certainly skyrocketed over the past few years. Ra al Ghul also has quite an interesting origin story, and he also underwent many changes after being exposed to the Lazarus pits. Ra al Ghul has been quite a crucial Batman villain over the years, and he also has several different versions that vary in their strengths and powers. Today, we will explore his anatomy in detail and tell you all about his infamous antics. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The true origins of Ra al Ghul are revealed in the Birth of the Demon story arc. Ra al Ghul's origins were explored in a mini-comic series titled Birth of the Demon, wherein it is revealed that he has been alive for over 600 years. Raz was initially just a physician who lived in a major city, and he later discovered the Lazarus pit and used it to save a dying prince's life. However, the prince later killed Raz's wife, and the king then decided to save his son by framing Raz for this murder. He then sentenced Raz to prison along with his dead wife's corpse, but one of his former patients rescued him. Raz then decided to take his revenge by poisoning the prince with a deadly virus, and he also recruited a tribe to wreak havoc all over the city. After finally destroying the prince, Raz started introducing himself as Demon's Head and became the infamous villain we know today. He later had a daughter named Talia, who ended up marrying Batman after they worked together to stop a terrorist named Kine. Raz also wanted an heir for his empire, and Talia later even got pregnant and had a son with Batman. However, Talia lied about having a miscarriage and later gave birth to her son in secret. Raz established his position as Batman's father-in-law and later stirred up trouble for him in several story arcs. How old is Ra al Ghul? Exploring the secret behind his long life. While the Birth of the Demon series stated that Ra al Ghul has been alive for over 600 years, no one knows his exact age, and even Raz seems to have lost track at this point. In the 6th issue of Azrael Comics, Ra al Ghul physically appears to be around 50 years old, but he states that he has been alive for about 448 years. He then got confused and wondered whether it had been 453 years instead, and he finally concluded that he had lost count after the Black Plague. While we might never uncover his exact age, it is certain that he has been around for a long time and has most certainly lived on Earth for several centuries. Is Ra al Ghul immortal? Ra al Ghul has appeared in a wide range of DC media, from comics to animated series, and his widespread presence makes us wonder whether he is immortal, since he has lived on for over 600 years and has also appeared in DC Comics on numerous occasions. We can presume that he is an immortal entity who will continue to stir up trouble for Batman for ages to come. However, we must consider the fact that Raz has managed to stay young and alive by using the Lazarus pit that heals people and helps them retain their youth at the cost of their sanity. It is entirely possible that Raz is not immortal, and that he has only come so far due to the Lazarus pit. In this scenario, Batman could probably kill Raz in combat and ensure that he does not use the pit again in order to heal himself. But this is quite a tricky task since Raz has grown quite powerful over the centuries. In the initial comics, Ra al Ghul takes the role of a father-in-law who also seems to be an undying villain whose presence will haunt Batman for years to come. However, Batman Begins writer David S. Goyer had different plans for his character. He stated that the film version of Ra al Ghul is not immortal since the cinematic universe does not have a Lazarus pit that would have otherwise helped Raz to prolong his life. While Raz's dead body is never seen in the film, the writer has clearly established that he has died and will not be returning to Christopher Nolan's Batman universe. How did the Lazarus pit impact his physiology? The Lazarus pits were natural phenomena that appeared all over the DC universe, and they were known for bestowing individuals with restorative powers and youth at the cost of their sanity. When Raz was a physician in the medieval ages, he stumbled across these pits when he was determined to save people from death. He first used these pits to restore the life of the dying prince who later killed his wife, and he eventually started using these Lazarus pits for his own good. Raz essentially dug an experimental chemical pit after discovering several restorative chemical pools known as Lazarus pits, and he then used them to save any being who was at death's door. He soon learned that the pits came at a huge cost after the dying prince returned to life and killed his wife after going insane. While they came at a huge price, Ra al Ghul continued to use these Lazarus pits for several centuries in order to retain his youth and also heal from any fatal injuries. The pits also helped him gain enhanced strength for a short period and made him more powerful than usual. Raz even ensured that his relatives could benefit from the pits, and his uncle and a boy named Hugh also used them to stay young. However, Raz eventually killed Hugh, and his uncle also went missing, after which Raz kept the secret of the pits to himself until his daughters were born. He later passed on this secret to both his daughters, Nissa and Talia, who also used the Lazarus pits from time to time. At this time, Raz believed that he had discovered the only Lazarus pits in existence, but he soon learned that there were such pits all over the world. He continued using these pits for centuries to remain in his prime, while leading the League of Assassins and hoping to find a worthy heir. While most beings found themselves incapable of using the pits more than once, Ra al Ghul was strong-willed and could handle the temporary bouts of insanity after using them. In fact, he even became wiser and more cunning over time after being exposed to the power of the Lazarus pits. Does Ra al Ghul have a deadly demonic form? Ra al Ghul has appeared in several different forms across his story arc, and he once even took a demonic form in the alternate universe set within the Dark Knights of Steel comic series. In this story, Ra al Ghul's medieval realm is reintroduced in a terrifying form, after the seer known as John Constantine becomes desperate and tries to bring back the king of the Kingdom of Storms. These events occurred when the Kingdoms of Storms and the House of El were preparing to go to war when King Jefferson and Prince Jacobs lost their lives at the hands of the Kryptonian royal family. Constantine intended to cast a spell to summon Etrigan the demon in order to bring Prince Jacobs back to life, but he was unaware of the fact that he would end up summoning Ra al Ghul in a demonic form. While Etrigan typically possessed Jason Blood's body in order to take a human form, he ended up getting associated with Ra al Ghul in this particular story arc. When Raz appears in this story arc, he introduces himself as the Demon's Head, and even tries to establish his superiority over Etrigan. He also makes grand plans to dominate Earth, as if it was his own kingdom. And fans liked this change in Raz's character as he came across as a more threatening entity in this alternate universe. This hybrid version of Ra al Ghul and Etrigan also showed a lot of promise and gave some hope for the revival of Prince Jacob. Exploring the lesser-known Catman version of Ra al Ghul. DC often explores alternate versions of characters, and they once even created an alternate Catman version of Ra al Ghul. Between the late 80s and early 2000s, DC introduced the Elseworld stories that covered several non-canon events and story arcs. Some of these arcs included a Victorian Batman fighting Jack the Ripper, among other things. And these comics truly made for a refreshing change in the history of the DC Universe. In one of these Elseworld stories, Ra al Ghul appeared as Catman, and he was also the head of a shadowy organization known as the House of Selene. He also had cat-like powers, as well as the ability to be reborn 9 times, just like a cat. However, he loses his last life during the events of Elseworlds, and thereby loses his immortality in this alternate version. What are some of the greatest powers of Ra al Ghul? While we have established that Ra al Ghul's greatest powers lay in his ability to heal from any injuries and retain his youth with the help of the Lazarus pits, he also had some more powers that made him quite invulnerable. To begin with, he had a genius-level intellect as well as mastery in science, medicine, and alchemy. He was a master strategist and tactician, and he sometimes even laid out elaborate plans years before even acting on them. He also had excellent leadership skills, and he ruled over the League of Assassins with an iron fist. He was their indisputable leader, and he maintained his organization so well that his inferiors were even willing to sacrifice themselves for him. Ra al Ghul was also a master swordsman, and he had honed his combat skills for several centuries. He was also trained in over 100 different forms of martial arts fighting styles, and it was certainly quite a challenge to defeat him in hand-to-hand combat. He also had a vast list of international contacts and connections, and could speak several languages ranging from Arabic, Russian, Japanese, French, and even Urdu. Ra al Ghul also had several weapons at his disposal, but he typically preferred old world weapons such as katanas or European swords. However, he had experience in using old as well as new forms of weapons, and he had been around for long enough to develop quite a collection of weapons at his disposal. While these were some of Ra al Ghul's powers and abilities, we must note that there were different versions of this character with varying levels of powers. For instance, he once had a cat-like form and even a demonic form, and he then gained unique powers in these alternate universes. Ra al Ghul once even gained special superpowers, such as energy projection, and he took a dip in the Well of Sins. But these powers soon faded and did not stick for long. Does Ra al Ghul have a regular family life? Exploring his children. Ra al Ghul did not have a regular family life, but he did father 3 children and later even hoped to find a worthy heir for his fortune. His firstborn child, Ghul al Ghul, was his only son, and he was also known as the White Ghost. He was born as an albino, and Ra al Ghul did not see him worthy enough to take over the family business. He later appeared in Batman, Resurrection of Ra al Ghul's story arc, where he sacrificed himself so that his father could be resurrected. Ghul also had a child named Ra al Ghul, who was recently introduced as Damian Wayne's enemy in the Teen Titans storyline. Ra al Ghul also had 2 daughters, out of which Nissa al Ghul was the eldest one. Raz once traveled to Russia and fell in love with a local, and Nyssa was the love child that resulted from this connection. She is known to be one of the last beings to hold the power of the Lazarus pits, and she often appears in comics and movies as one of Batman's enemies. However, Ra's al Ghul's most notable child is Talia al Ghul, who later married Batman and had 2 children with him. Ra's al Ghul once met a woman named Melisande at Woodstock, and the two formed an intimate relationship that resulted in Talia's birth. Talia initially trained under Raz's watchful eye in the League of Assassins, but she eventually chose Bruce Wayne over her father's organization. This decision greatly angered Ra's al Ghul, while Talia and Bruce went on to strengthen their relationship and also parent 2 children. Damian Wayne, also known as Damian al Ghul, was Bruce and Talia's child, and Ra's al Ghul saw a lot of potential in him. Raz also wanted Damian to become the next Demon's Head and inherit his position as the leader of the League of Assassins, but the young boy ended up training under Bruce's watchful eye in the end. Bruce and Talia also had another child named Athanasia al Ghul, but Talia kept her secret from Bruce and Damian and raised her alone. Athanasia grew up around the League of Assassins under Talia's watchful eye, and she is yet to appear in the Prime Earth continuity. Ra's al Ghul may not have had the most normal family, but he certainly had capable children who continued his legacy and gave him many grandchildren. How did the Lazarus pit impact his sanity? While Ra's al Ghul could always rely on the Lazarus pit to restore his health and help him retain his youth, it also had some adverse side effects on his sanity. The pit certainly helped him extend his lifespan, but it also drove him to insanity for a temporary period. It made him quite violent and unstable. For brief periods, Ra's al Ghul was unable to control himself after emerging from the Lazarus pit, and he was once even blamed for killing his own wife after exposing himself to the pit.
Wayne and Talia. How ironic that your company and holdings will fund.
Conclusion. To sum it up, Ra's al Ghul was certainly one of the most formidable villains in Batman's rogue gallery, and he also lived quite an interesting life that captured the audience's attention. He also had a wide range of abilities as well as the power of the Lazarus pit by his side, and he certainly gave quite a tough fight to the Dark Knight. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks everyone.